VLSos here. This is a video lesson on percent increase and decrease. We're going to think of change as percentages. And before we change, we want to understand that what we have to begin with before change occurs, we want to think of it as having 100% of a quantity. We could imagine a rectangle being a visual representation of something that we could measure. We could think of measuring this rectangle's area. The beginning is to have one rectangle. We have started with 100% of this rectangle, and changing it would mean to increase the rectangle's size or area, and to decrease means to reduce the rectangle size or area. We can think of increase and decrease as a percentage of change. Very often we can describe an increase, in this case, as 25% more. I put it in quotes because we could use language to communicate an increase like 25% more. So this would be 25% in addition to what we started with. If we begin with 100% of something, like this rectangle's area, then to increase by 25% would be to add 25% more to the original 100%. So how much do you get after the increase? As a percentage, you would have 125% of what you started with. Visually, we can represent this with the original rectangle area that we might have started with. That's the 100%. And then we would add another 25%, which could be represented as a second rectangle, but then we're only going to take a fraction of it and shade it to consider how much of that second rectangle we're measuring. This amount would be the increase, 25% more. And the original would be the 100% that we started with. So the shaded area that is combined is 125% of the original 100% start. We could call a decrease 25% less. 25% less means we have in our beginning the 100% that we start with. 25% less then would be subtracting 25% from what we started with. And what we're left with, in this case, is 75%. 100 minus 25. Visually, I could represent the 100% that we start with, and I would then need to make a section and take it away. We could unshade that 25% that we're decreasing by, which leaves the 75% left shaded. Let's work a couple more examples. We could ask, how much after a 90% increase? We could imagine that we're increasing any quantity. How much of the quantity would we have after a 90% increase? So we have to consider that we begin with 100% of our quantity, whatever we're measuring, and we're adding an additional 90% to make a total of 190%. Let's consider another example of a decrease. How much after a 90% decrease. We start again with the 100%. We decrease by subtracting 90%, and what we're left with is only 10% of the original quantity. Percent increase and decrease is a concept that we want to practice. It's very often a beginning or a part of a little more complicated questions and problems.